the new CBA and expanding the playoffs. Let's get into that a little bit because I thought that talk was uh, look, expanding the playoffs to 14 teams is basically ridiculous. Okay? If you notice, you do 12 now. And look usually at the teams that are 5th and 6th in the playoffs, and they usually are not good enough. And look, I know that you're going to tell me, well, oh, in the past, there have been some wild card teams that have made it all the way to the Super Bowl and won it. You're right. But if you look at the recent history and you look at the teams that are making the playoffs and they're like the 6 seeds and the 5th seeds, they're usually pretty mediocre, you know? And they're not that impressive and they usually get dogged in the playoffs. I mean, when you've watched the Dolphins make the playoffs the last couple of times in the last, whatever it is, 12 years twice or whatever it is that they've what is it? No, 16 and 8. So yeah, about 12 years, 13 years. In the last 13 years, the two times they made the playoffs, they got their asses spanked. And that happens a lot in the NFL playoffs. I mean, it happens a ton, man. And so that's why it's one of those deals that I don't know how you end up really you're not going to end up in other words, you're not going to end up with quality football. Now, if this whole thing is, well, it adds excitement to the league and one more team makes the playoffs and the top seed is the only one that gets the bye week, the second team is not, they're going to be because the other 6 will battle out or whatever. Look, man, whatever floats your boat. But football already as it is mediocre to average football throughout the league. It's not really good football that we've been watching year in and year out. There's only a couple teams that can actually play really good football. There's a lot of bad and mediocre teams in the NFL. And by expanding the playoffs, you're really not bettering the league itself. Okay? You're just not. And that to me is the part that is kind of a joke. That all we're doing is money grabbing here because that's what the owners are doing. It's one more team that gets into the playoffs, so more playoff revenue, but you're not improving the playoffs by any stretch. But they don't care because now they get money out of another fan base that's in the playoffs, right? They'll buy their playoff shirts, their playoff hats, all that wild card crap. I'm looking at the teams that were the wild cards this year, right? And let me see, who is it? Buffalo. You have Baltimore, Buffalo, Houston, Tennessee, Kansas City, and New England, right? This year, it was actually pretty decent. Like Buffalo is 10-6, but they really didn't have an opportunity at winning the title. It's not like they were going to win anything with Jared Allen, which, by the way, we do have a reporter that wrote a nice article on Jared Allen pointing out exactly how mediocre of a passer he is, and he'll always be, of course. You look at the year before, I think it was, let's see, we have Indy at 10-6, Chiefs, Chargers, Baltimore Ravens, and the New England Patriots. Okay, Ravens really didn't have much of a shot with Lamar. I know that they did better this year, obviously, and Tennessee shut them down a little bit. But you look at the back end of it. Normally, it's teams that Philadelphia was your wild card team in the NFC conference last year. Dallas, Chicago, New Orleans, and the Rams all were your divisional winners. And then you had the wild card teams, the back end, they're really not that impressive. AFC 17, New England, Pittsburgh, the Jags, the Chiefs. Okay. And then you had your wild cards were Tennessee at 9-7, which again, they didn't have a shot, and Buffalo at 9-7, which again, they didn't have a shot. Tennessee and New England and Buffalo 2 years ago, mediocre teams. They're happy to get into the playoffs, but they're not really going to make any kind of an impact. I should have looked at the NFC side before I went to 16. 16, New England, the Steelers, Houston at 9-7, Kansas City, and Oakland was also 12-4. Okay, and so and Houston was a divisional winner. The Dolphins were the team along as the wild card team along with the Raiders. Okay, so think about it. The Dolphins in 16 were the 6th seed. Come on, man. Were they really playoff caliber? Like the Dolphins had any shot in the playoffs? Damn, I didn't check the NFC again. I hate that I did that again. But I'm going back now. I'm going to the AFC in 15. So New England, the Bengals, the Texans won at 9-7, and then the Broncos won at 12-4. Kansas City was 11-5 with Alex Smith, and Pittsburgh was 10-6. Those were your wild card teams. And again, the Kansas City team with Alex Smith, yeah, they made the playoffs, but were they any kind of an impactful team? Probably not. In the NFC side, the Redskins won the division. The Vikings won their division. Panthers were 15-1. Carolina was Cardinals were 13-3. Seattle was 10-6, and the Packers were 10-6. I know you got Aaron Rodgers, so that might be you might feel like you have a little bit of a shot, but not that. If you remember that team, that it wasn't a defensive stud team or anything along those lines. Like I said, if you look overall the last couple of years, those teams that are 5-6 in the wild card, most of them really don't have a shot. Most of them really are just happy to be there. So if you're adding a 7th team, they're going to be happy to be there. It's not going to be a team that really has a shot at making a deep run. They need so much luck to go their way and injuries and all kinds of stuff to break for them. I just don't find it where it makes a lot of sense to put 14 teams. I went back to 16 on the NFC side, where the Cowboys won their division, the Packers won theirs at 10-6, the Falcons won at 11-5, Seahawks at 10-5. Your wild card teams were the Giants at 11-5 and the Lions at 9-7. You see what I mean? The 6th team is the Lions at 9-7. Were they really going to, was that Lions team really going to get to the Super Bowl? No. So I'm telling you, more often than not, that 6th team, you just, all right, let me go to 17 now on the NFC side, just to show you. Eagles, Minnesota, New Orleans, and the Rams all won their division. The Panthers were the wild card. Who was the second wild card? Oh, the Falcons at 10-6. I mean, nice records, but I mean, these aren't teams again that aren't necessarily. Let me see on 18, right? Is this 18 now? Yes, 18 on the NFC side. Cowboys won it, Bears won it, Saints won it, Rams won it. Seahawks were your wild card, and the Eagles were your wild card. And I think this is the year the Eagles, what is it, 18? No, the Eagles won it in 18 or 17. 17, right? So 18, they ended up as a wild card, and then I got to check out how long they lasted. But again, you see what I'm saying? It doesn't, it's not something that is a lock. It's not really bettering your league. It's not bettering your matchups. All it is a money grab to get a seventh city in, to sucker some fans in, to pay extra money for all kinds of things for the playoffs. And they really have no shot. It's just,
I want to say the only years that we have that wackiness, it was a 7-9 team. Was it Seattle or New Orleans that won?
Yeah. Oh, they won one game.
One game,
Yeah,
right.
they
And
beat
the
New
other
Orleans, right?
right.
Didn't they beat the
It was
Saints?
New Orleans in Seattle.
Right.
And I can't
But
remember
that
who
was
the
the
7 and
building.
9.
That was the building of a championship
Right.
team. That
That
was
was
the
their first
early
in.
stages of a championship
And
team.
they were 7-9, got in and won a game.
So-
The other
so-
one, obviously, is Arizona with Kurt Warner.
Yeah,
They were
8-8.
9. They were 9-7.
They were
I think,
9-7 or 8-8.
I think they were 9-7.
Yeah.
And their defense woke up finally, and they got all the way to the Super Bowl and almost beat the Steelers.
You know what,
Those
listen-
are the only 2 years that I can remember
And a
that
couple
you
of-
have this where the wacky bottom guy
and
has a shot.
And the wild card has won it. I mean, the Raiders.
Oh, the Raiders were the first ones against the
Giants,
Eagles.
I think, were a
The
wild
Giants,
card.
yes, they won
know,
all the playoff games
on the road.
Yes.
Yeah. So it happens once in a while, but more often than not,
Right. Out of what are we talking? We're going into the 55th Super Bowl. We've got like maybe 5 scenarios out of 50.
It's a money grab. That's all this is a money grab, and they can add the 7th team, but it's not like you feel like you had a shot. It's like when our Dolphins made it a couple years ago. Come on, man, you knew they had no shot, but whatever.
You know what I'm thinking? Oh, they wanted 17 games. The players are all about not that, and adding this because they love Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving having 3 games. You know what I mean? We start at 12 and we go all the way to midnight, 11 o'clock. And with the wild card, that first week having 3 games, imagine that's Saturday, 3 football games, Sunday, 3 football games. And it's kind of a compromise to getting, you know what I mean, that 17th game.
Right.
You know, I really believe this is about that Saturday and Sunday, that wild card week, it being like Thanksgiving, 3 football games.
Right. No, you're right. You're right.
And let's face it, playoff games, probably more money. Ticket prices a little, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
All those, it's sold out.
Yeah.
You know, the NFL with an extra game on a playoff, the money, man.
Yeah. Go Gator says Derek Carr broke his leg in 16, so Oakland had Connor Cook in the wild card. Yeah, I mean, whatever injuries, I'm just telling you that on average, okay, look, I love the NFL, but on average, okay, there's a lot of mediocre football being played in the NFL. Like a ton of mediocre football. That's what I'm trying to tell you. All you're doing by adding an extra 14 teams in the playoffs, you're adding teams that don't belong in the playoffs. That's all. But that's how this world is. We've watered down the Hall of Fames and everything, even rock and roll. And we'll water down the playoffs because hockey and basketball allow more than half their teams in the playoffs. Both have 30. Both allow 16. That's more than half. You know, I get it. Once in a while, they had injuries all year and they weren't very good. And then all of a sudden now their team clicked at the end like the Giants, and their defense got on a roll because they have a nasty ass defense, and they ran the table and went all the way. I get it. Once in a while, it's going to happen. But my point is, more often than not, the teams that are in the wild card, they're happy to be there. And to me, it's a joke that they're actually adding. It's just a money grab. That's all. I'm just not naive to think that this is actually, you're doing something that's for the good of the game or anything along those lines.